Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something really crucial. Workplace stress and burnout.
Yeah, it touches so many people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Chances are you felt the weight of work at some point, and honestly, it's a massive issue right now. Just think about this. Around 83% of U.S. workers say they experience work-related stress.
83%. That's huge.
It is. And for more than half of them, 54%, it actually spills over, impacting their home lives.
That work-life boundary just blurs.
Exactly. And here's a number that really stopped me in my tracks. Some estimates link workplace stress to a staggering 120,000 deaths in the U.S. annually.
Wow. Those numbers really paint a stark picture, don't they? This isn't just, having a tough day. It's serious.
It really is. So our mission in this deep dive, well, is to cut through the noise. We want to really understand workplace stress and burnout properly.
Get to the core of it.
Yeah, uncover the causes, pinpoint those warning signs, the ones we often miss, and importantly, give you some actionable strategies, things you can use and maybe things your organization can use too.
So people walk away feeling informed, empowered maybe.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Truly informed and empowered on what's become such a vital topic.
And thinking bigger picture, tackling this isn't just about employee well-being, though that's critical.
Right.
There's a strong economic argument too. Research actually suggests that for every dollar invested in mental health support, you can see up to a $4 return in productivity.
$4 back for every $1 in. That's significant.
It really is. It shifts this from just an HR thing to, well, a core business imperative. And that return, it often shows up as, fewer sick days, more innovation. People are just more engaged when they feel better.
Makes total sense. And what worries me is how, well, normal high workplace stress seems to have become.
Yeah, it's almost expected.
Right. Between 2019 and 2021, something like 65% of U.S. workers consistently said work was a major source of their stress.
That kind of normalization, that's a real red flag, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It just highlights how urgently we need to start building, healthier workplaces, healthier ecosystems.
So let's get down to basics then. When we say workplace stress, what are we actually talking about? What does that mean?
Okay, good question. Let's unpack it. Workplace stress is essentially those harmful physical and emotional responses that pop up when your job demands. They just don't line up.
Don't line up with what?
With what you feel capable of doing, or the resources you actually have, or even just your basic needs as a person.
Yeah.
That mismatch, that's the key word here.
Mismatch, right? The imbalance between the pressure and your ability to cope.
Exactly.
That's a really critical distinction because it's not just about having a lot to do, right? It's about having the support, the tools, the autonomy maybe.
Yeah, to actually meet those demands. And it's important to separate this from, general life stress too.
Good point. Lots of things cause stress.
Sure, relationships, money, all that.
Yeah.
But workplace stress is specifically tied to the job, the conditions, the environment.
Right. And we should probably also distinguish it from healthy pressure, a challenge.
Yes, that's a great point. Some pressure can actually be good for us. It can motivate you, help you grow, give you that buzz when you overcome something. But stress, the bad kind, that takes hold when the pressure just becomes too much. Excessive. It feels completely overwhelming, unmanageable.
Precisely. When the demands just constantly, consistently outweigh your capacity to cope. And that's when we start seeing those negative effects, physically and emotionally.
Okay, so how does it actually show up? What are some common signs that someone might be feeling this workplace stress?
Well, the signs can be really diverse. They vary, but we can sort of group them, maybe. Physical, emotional, behavioral.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with the physical stuff. How does it affect the body? It's interesting because we often think mental strain, right? But persistent fatigue, even when you should be rested, that's often a really early sign.
Like sleep doesn't even fix it.
Exactly. That suggests something deeper than just a busy week is going on. Beyond that, think muscle tension, aches, maybe frequent headaches.
I hear headaches a lot.
Yeah, me too. Even heart palpitations sometimes. Sleep definitely suffers. Maybe you can't get to sleep or you wake up a lot.
Poor quality sleep, yeah.
Digestive issues can flare up too.
Yep.
Some people even get skin problems like eczema or rashes.
Stress manifesting physically.
Totally. And in more serious cases, loss of appetite or even raised blood pressure. Long term, it increases risks for things like heart problems and musculoskeletal issues.
Those are pretty significant signals from your body. It really shows how connected our physical and mental states are. So what about the emotional side, the psychological signs? What might someone be feeling?
Emotionally, well, you might notice increased irritability, like a shorter fuse than usual.
Snapping easily.
Yeah, exactly. Anxiety is common, maybe even feelings creeping towards depression, a general sense of discouragement, perhaps, a more pessimistic view on things,
Feeling kind of hopeless.
or just feeling completely swamped, overwhelmed. You might see noticeable mood swings or just a kind of persistent low mood, and that overall feeling of being drained,
Yeah.
even if you haven't done much physically.
Right, that mental exhaustion.
Yeah.
And those internal feelings, they often bubble up and change how we act, right? What are some of the behavioral symptoms we might see?
Behaviorally, yeah, things can change. Difficulty concentrating is a big one. Trouble making decisions. Tasks that used to be simple suddenly feel hard.
Brain fog, almost.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
People might become more tearful or just generally react more emotionally to things. There can be a pull towards withdrawing socially, too, like avoiding colleagues.
Pulling back from the team.
Increased absenteeism, more sick days, showing up late more often. That can be a sign. Communication might drop off.
Quieter than usual.
Exactly. And some people might even start talking about quitting, wanting to leave. Other flags. Maybe uncharacteristic aggression, a noticeable dip in work performance, less creativity.
Yeah, finding it hard to come up with new ideas.
Right. Problems in relationships at work, getting frustrated really easily, just losing interest in the work itself, and even social isolation, pulling away from people outside of work too.
Wow. It's quite sobering how stress can ripple out and affect our connections, our performance, everything. I think a lot of listeners can probably relate to that feeling, that urge to just shut down when things get too much.
Definitely.
That's a really good overview. It just highlights how stress can seep into every single part of someone's life. And it's so important, isn't it, to see these symptoms as like an early warning system.
Absolutely. That's the key. Even the small signs shouldn't just be brushed off.
Right. We might ignore a headache or a bad night's sleep.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just tired. But when these things become regular or they start stacking up, that's a clear signal. Something's not right.
And the danger, I suppose, is if you ignore those early signs.
They can escalate. They really can. Into more serious stuff like full-blown burnout, anxiety disorders, depression, even those physical health problems we talked about getting worse.
So paying attention, being aware in ourselves, and maybe noticing in our colleagues, too, that's really crucial for stepping in early.
Couldn't agree more.
Which naturally brings us to burnout. It's a word we hear all the time.
All the time.
And sometimes it gets used interchangeably with stress, but it's really a different beast, isn't it?
It is. It's distinct. Burnout isn't just being really stressed. It's a specific psychological syndrome. And it comes from prolonged, unmanaged workplace stress.
Unmanaged being the key word there.
Exactly. And it's important to stress, haha, no pun intended, that it's specifically an occupational phenomenon. It starts with your experiences at work.
Okay. And it's often described using that triad, right? 3 core dimensions.
That's right, the triad of burnout. Can you walk us through those?
Sure. The first one is exhaustion. And this isn't just feeling tired, like after a long week.
Oh.
It's deeper. A profound, persistent depletion of energy, mental, physical, emotional. You feel completely drained.
And even rest doesn't seem to help much. Like a weekend off doesn't recharge you.
Exactly. Things that usually work, they just don't cut it anymore. You can't seem to recover that energy.
Okay, so exhaustion is number one. What's the second part of the triad?
The second is cynicism, or sometimes it's called depersonalization.
Right.
This is about developing this kind of mental distance from your job. You might start feeling really negative, detached.
Like you just don't care anymore.
Yeah, or even becoming critical, cynical about the work, your colleagues, the whole organization. It's like you've put up an emotional wall.
Okay, so exhaustion, cynicism, and the third piece.
The third is reduced professional efficacy, or you might hear it as a diminished sense of personal accomplishment.
So feeling like you're not good at your job anymore.
Pretty much. It's a feeling that your competence has dropped, that you're not really achieving anything meaningful. Your efforts feel pointless, futile. Even simple tasks can start to feel overwhelming.
Got it. So if someone under stress might still be, fighting it, trying to cope, hoping things get better.
Right, still struggling.
Someone with burnout has often kind of given up. They feel empty, out of gas, lost that hope or meaning in their work.
Precisely. And unlike, say, acute stress, which might ease up with a break or a change, burnout tends to be more dug in, more entrenched. It often needs a more significant intervention.
Okay. And you mentioned the relationship between stress and burnout isn't just one way.
No, it's more complex. Research points towards a kind of vicious cycle.
Ah, Okay, how does that work?
Well, chronic stress can definitely lead to burnout. That makes sense.
Right.
But experiencing burnout itself can actually make you feel even more stressed. It feeds back into it.
Really? How so?
Studies suggest burnout might have a bigger impact on your later stress levels than stress has on burnout, if that makes sense. So you get stuck in this loop.
Okay.
Burnout makes you perceive your work as even more stressful. Maybe time pressure feels worse, tasks seem harder, and that heightened stress then just fuels the burnout further.
Wow. Okay. So it can spiral. That makes spotting the signs of burnout early even more important than to break that cycle.
Absolutely critical.
So what are those key indicators? What should we be looking for that suggests someone's moving beyond just stress and heading toward burnout?
Well, the general signs often look like chronic stress, but maybe more intense, more persistent, pervasive.
Okay.
Physically, you might see those recurring headaches again, stomach problems, but especially that relentless chronic fatigue we talked about, getting sick more often maybe, big changes in appetite or sleep.
Right. The physical toll continues. And emotionally.
Emotionally, look for feelings of helplessness, maybe hopelessness. That pervasive cynicism we mentioned is a big one. Self-doubt creeping in. Less satisfaction with work, but also with life in general.
Affects everything.
Yeah. Emotional detachment, feeling lonely even if you're around people, losing motivation, feeling disillusioned.
And behaviorally. What might change?
Behaviorally, you might see job performance decline more significantly, more social withdrawal. Procrastination might increase a lot.
Putting things off constantly.
Yeah, maybe those uncharacteristic emotional outbursts. Sometimes, unfortunately, an increased reliance on substances. Definitely more absenteeism, and just a general feeling of not being effective at work anymore.
Right. And I know there's this idea of stages of burnout, like it develops over time.
Yes, the 12 stages model from Freudenberger and North. It's quite detailed, but the main takeaway is that it highlights a common progression.
We don't need all 12, but what's the gist?
Well, it often starts with this intense need to prove oneself, working harder and harder.
The overcommitment phase.
Exactly. Which then leads to neglecting your own needs, sleep, social life, hobbies.
Pushing everything else aside.
Right. And then gradually more conflicts might arise, values shift, denial kicks in, and eventually withdrawal, behavioral changes, that depersonalization or cynicism, feeling empty, culminating in total burnout.
So it really shows it's usually not sudden, it's a gradual slide.
It's often a slow burn, yes.
Yep.
And it brings us back to that crucial phrase. Burnout comes from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Successfully managed. Yeah, that points to shared responsibility, doesn't it? It's not just on the individual to be tougher.
Absolutely not. While individual coping skills matter, the real drivers, things like insane workloads, no control, not enough reward or recognition, a toxic team environment, unfairness, values clashes. These are largely organizational issues, systemic problems.
So if the company doesn't fix those underlying issues, individuals are just paddling upstream.
Constantly fighting an uphill battle, yes. And because of that vicious cycle where stress fuels burnout and burnout fuels stress, early intervention that tackles both the individual side and the organizational factors is just vital. Catching it early can stop that downward spiral. It makes recovery much more likely.
Okay. So having that clear distinction between stress, maybe feeling overwhelmed but still fighting, and burnout feeling depleted, hopeless, is really helpful.
Definitely.
And to really figure out how to tackle it, we need to dig into the anatomy of burnout, right? Those key workplace factors that allow it to take root. Exactly. And research, particularly by Maslach and Leiter, points to 6 main areas of work life. When there are ongoing problems in these areas, the risk of burnout shoots up.
Right. The 6 drivers. Let's list them. Workload, control, reward, community, fairness, and values.
Got them.
Okay, let's start with workload. This isn't just how much work.
Right. No, it's more than volume. It's also the intensity, the pace, unrealistic deadlines, always working long hours, not having the resources, enough time, the right tools, support.
Everything you need to actually do the job.
Exactly. We saw it during the pandemic, didn't we? People working remotely, 45% working more hours, 70% working weekends. That kind of sustained overload. It's a direct line to exhaustion.
Okay, makes sense. Then control, or the lack of it.
Yeah. This is about how much, say, you feel you have over your work, your tasks, how you do them, your schedule maybe.
So feeling micromanaged would fit here.
Definitely. Or being stuck with really rigid rules that don't let you use your judgment, not being able to use your skills properly. It's incredibly demotivating. Leads to that feeling of helplessness, cynicism.
Got it. Next up, reward.
And this is both tangible and intangible.
Meaning?
Well, obviously, pay matters. Not earning enough is a big stressor. But it's also about recognition, feeling appreciated, getting positive feedback, having opportunities to grow or advance.
So not just the paycheck.
Not at all. If you constantly feel your hard work goes unnoticed or isn't valued, that breeds disillusionment. It hits that sense of personal accomplishment hard. Remember that $4 return. Recognition is often a key part of that.
Ah, good link back. Okay, then community, the social side.
Exactly. The quality of your relationships at work. Feeling isolated, constant conflict with your boss or team, lack of trust, maybe dealing with incivility or even bullying.
Creates a toxic environment.
It really does. Whereas positive connections, feeling like you belong, that can be a huge buffer against stress.
Makes sense. And number 5 was fairness.
Yes. This is about perceived equity. Justice in the workplace. Uneven workload distribution, some people overloaded, others not. Unfair pay or promotion decisions. Favoritism. Not having a clear or effective way to raise concerns or grievances.
Yeah, if you feel things are unfair, it definitely breeds resentment. Cynicism too, probably.
Absolutely. And finally, number 6, values.
Okay.
This is about the match or mismatch between your personal core values and what the organization expects or does.
Like being asked to do something unethical.
That's a big one. Or just feeling your work lacks meaning, like it doesn't align with what's important to you. That disconnect can really fuel disillusionment, exhaustion, cynicism.
Okay, those 6 are powerful. But are there other factors too, beyond those core areas?
Oh, definitely. Other things contribute. Lack of role clarity is one.
Not knowing what you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. Ambiguity and expectations. Apparently, only about half of workers strongly agree they even know what's expected of them day to day.
Wow, that alone must be stressful.
Hugely. Then poor communication and support from managers. That's massive.
A bad boss situation.
Yeah, managers who are negligent, don't give feedback, don't provide resources. Studies show you're about 70% less likely to experience burnout if you feel strongly supported by your manager.
70%, that's huge.
It is. Also, unreasonable time pressure. Just constantly feeling rushed. Not having enough time. Again, people who feel they do have enough time are 70% less likely to burn out.
Same number, interesting.
Yeah. Job insecurity, worrying about layoffs, unstable conditions, that's a known stressor. And maybe surprisingly, monotonous or unchallenging work.
You can burn out from being bored.
Sort of. It's sometimes called under-challenged burnout. You feel apathetic, disengaged, because the work isn't stimulating.
Okay, so it's complex. And these factors don't exist in isolation, right? They overlap.
Absolutely. They often interact, pile up, make things worse. Think about someone with a huge workload.
Okay.
If they also have no control over how they tackle it and they get zero recognition, that's a recipe for burnout.
Right, it compounds.
And sometimes it's not even just the objective reality, but the perception, which is shaped by communication, transparency, support.
Yeah, like you said, poor communication can make a manageable workload feel impossible.
Exactly. Or lack of transparency makes people assume the worst about fairness, which is why tackling these drivers at the company level is just so important.
It really helps to understand those drivers.
Yeah.
It makes the consequences, both for individuals and for organizations, make a lot more sense.
Yeah, the impact is far-reaching.
Let's talk about the toll on employees first.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, we mentioned the risks: heart disease, chronic pain, digestive issues.
Mm-hmm. And the immediate stuff like fatigue, headaches, sleep problems. And burnout specifically brings that prolonged exhaustion, maybe getting sick more often.
Right. And mentally, emotionally?
Well, the increased risk of anxiety, depression, mood disorders is clear. And those burnout dimensions, they lead directly to feeling helpless, like a failure, doubting yourself, disillusioned, losing motivation, feeling detached. Even thinking clearly can become harder.
Cognitive function takes a hit.
Yeah, concentration, memory, it all suffers.
And obviously, this hammers job satisfaction and engagement.
Completely. People lose interest, they pull back, put in less effort, lose that inner drive.
Which, of course, has a massive knock-on effect for organizations. The bottom line:
Huge impact. First off, decreased productivity and performance. That's kind of obvious.
lower quality work, fewer ideas.
More errors, missed deadlines, and then there's that tricky issue of presenteeism.
Ah, yes. Being there, but not really there.
Exactly. Physically present, but mentally checked out, unproductive. Some argue that's even more costly than people just taking a day off.
I can see why. Harder to measure, maybe, but the drain is real. And then there's actual absenteeism, too.
Yep. Stressed and burned out employees are way more likely to take sick days. One stat said burned out employees are 63% more likely to take a sick day, and over 60% of all absenteeism is linked to stress or burnout.
60%, wow. And turnover, people leaving.
Big one. Burnout is a really strong predictor of people looking for a new job, about 2.6 times more likely according to Gallup.
And replacing people is expensive.
Very. Recruitment costs, training new people, the disruption to the team, even the hit to the company's reputation. It all adds up.
And widespread stress just creates a negative vibe, right? Low morale.
Absolutely. It can become toxic, affects team dynamics, communication breaks down, more conflict arises.
And finally, healthcare costs probably go up for the company too.
Makes sense. More insurance claims, more doctor visits due to those stress-related health problems.
It really drives home that link, doesn't it? Employee well-being isn't just nice to have, it's fundamental to organizational success.
It's a strategic objective, or it should be.
Yeah.
And companies really need to look beyond just tracking sick days and understand the hidden costs of presenteeism.
Okay, so knowing all these consequences, what can individuals actually do? How can we manage our own stress, build resilience, especially if the work environment isn't perfect?
Yeah, it's crucial to remember that even though the organization has a huge responsibility, individuals aren't powerless. We do have agency.
So where do we start?
Proactive self-care is fundamental. Lifestyle adjustments.
Yeah.
Sounds basic? Maybe, but it's powerful.
Like,
Focusing on physical well-being, regular exercise, aiming for maybe 30 minutes most days, eating well, staying hydrated like the classic 8 glasses of water, and prioritizing good quality sleep, enough of it.
building that strong foundation.
Exactly. And really internalizing that self-care isn't selfish or a luxury, it's necessary, a prerequisite for functioning well.
Okay. What else? Things like mindfulness, meditation.
Yes, definitely. Those can be incredibly helpful for managing stress in the moment, but also for building resilience over time.
So mindfulness is about being present, right? Not judging.
Yeah, just being aware of the here and now. Meditation is more of a formal practice, but even a few minutes a day can help. Deep breathing exercises too, diaphragmatic breathing, super simple, very effective for calming the nervous system quickly.
Like taking a few slow breaths when you feel overwhelmed.
Exactly. And don't forget other things, stretching, maybe some yoga, making time for hobbies you actually enjoy, things that help you disconnect and recharge.
Okay. And what about how we actually cope with the stress when it hits? Research must say something about effective strategies,
It does. Broadly, there's problem-focused coping,
which means
actively trying to tackle the stressor itself. Identify the problem, brainstorm solutions, make a plan, do it. Research shows this is negatively correlated with all burnout dimensions, meaning it helps reduce burnout.
so taking action where you can.
Right. Then there's emotion-focused coping, managing your emotional response to the stress. This one's a bit more complex.
How so?
Well, some strategies are adaptive, helpful, like seeking social support, talking to friends, colleagues. That's linked to lower depersonalization and higher accomplishment.
Makes sense. Talking helps.
Reappraisal, too, trying to reframe a negative situation, look at it differently, also helpful. Finding comfort in religion or spirituality can work for some people.
Okay, those sound positive. What's the downside?
Some emotion-focused strategies can be maladaptive, counterproductive, like excessive venting without seeking solutions, isolating yourself, avoidance, just passively resigning yourself to this situation.
So just complaining without action or hiding away doesn't really help long term.
Generally, no. It might feel like relief momentarily, but doesn't fix the underlying issue and can sometimes make things worse.
So it's about actively addressing the problem, if you can, and finding healthy ways to manage the feelings, avoiding those unhelpful coping habits.
Well put. And related to taking action, effective time management and setting boundaries are absolutely vital too.
Yes, the boundaries thing feels huge, especially now.
Totally. Making task lists, prioritizing, scheduling things for when you have most energy, breaking big tasks down. Basic stuff, but it works.
And saying no, delegating.
Crucial. Clearly defining and communicating your limits on workload, on working hours, protecting your time outside of work, not being available 24/7.
Easier said than done sometimes, but important.
Very. And don't underestimate the power of social support. We mentioned seeking it as a coping strategy,
Right.
but just maintaining those connections with supportive people, friends, family, colleagues you trust is huge. And knowing when to seek professional help.
Talking to a therapist, counselor.
Yes. Exploring those options. There are often affordable routes, too. It's a sign of strength, not weakness, to ask for help when you're struggling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe just checking in with yourself regularly, like journaling.
Great suggestion. Self-reflection helps you notice the signs early, see what's working, what's not, when you might need more support.
Okay, so lots individuals can do. But back to the earlier point, these strategies help you build resilience. cope better.
But they can't fix a fundamentally broken work environment on their own.
Right. It has to be a dual approach.
Hmm.
Which brings us to the organization's role.
Yes. Sustainable change, lasting impact that really requires organizational intervention. Shifting the focus from fixing individuals to fixing the conditions that cause the stress. And Anoyesh is very clear on this focus on working conditions.
So how do organizations do that? Where do they start?
Adopting a prevention mindset is key. Proactive, not reactive.
Looking for risks before people burn out.
Exactly. Using those 6 drivers, workload, control, reward, community, fairness, values, as a framework to assess risks and plan interventions. Regularly getting employee feedback surveys, focus groups, analyzing data. OSHA has resources on this too.
Okay, assess the risks. Then what? Redesign the work itself.
That's a huge part of it. Managing workload, reasonable expectations, clear assignments, enough staff. WHO recommends this. Improving efficiency, encouraging proper breaks.
Not just piling more on.
Right. Enhancing control and autonomy, empowering employees, offering flexibility where possible, like remote work or flex time. The Surgeon General highlights flexibility and ensuring role clarity, clear responsibilities, clear expectations.
Reducing that ambiguity we talked about.
Precisely. And then fostering that positive culture support, recognition, fairness, building community teamwork, collaboration, positive relationships. The Surgeon General emphasizes inclusion here. Open communication, maybe peer support programs, creating psychological safety so people feel okay speaking up.
Feeling safe to be vulnerable or raise concerns.
Yes. Implementing fair reward and recognition systems, fair pay and benefits, obviously, but also genuine appreciation, non-monetary rewards, development opportunities.
Making people feel valued.
Promoting fairness and transparency, consistent policies, clear decision-making, proper grievance procedures, and aligning actions with stated values, making work feel meaningful.
And leadership is key to all this, presumably.
Absolutely critical. Leaders need training how to spot signs of stress, how to communicate well, how to manage these risks. Anoyesh has resources for healthcare leaders, for example.
So they have the skills.
And the mindset. Empathetic, supportive leadership, active listening, and crucially, leading by example.
Practicing what they preach.
Exactly. Healthy habits, respecting boundaries themselves. The Surgeon General emphasizes this too. It sends a powerful message.
Okay. And providing actual resources.
Essential. Robust employee assistance programs, EAPs. Comprehensive mental health benefits. SAM HAI talks about parity here. Stress management training for employees. Flexible work options, adequate paid leave.
A whole toolkit of support.
Yeah, and leading bodies like WHO, NUASH, OSHA, the Surgeon General, they all echo these themes. Fix the work conditions, provide support, train leaders, build a positive culture, enable flexibility. It's about creating an environment where people can thrive.
And this isn't just fluffy stuff. It pays off for the company.
Definitely. These strategies are an investment. You get that return on well-being we mentioned. Better productivity, better retention, lower absenteeism, lower healthcare costs. Addressing drivers like role clarity and manager support directly reduces the likelihood of burnout.
But the policies only work if leadership is truly committed, right?
Yeah.
And the culture supports it.
100%. Policies on paper mean nothing without genuine leadership buy-in, role modeling, and a culture where it's okay to use the support to set boundaries. It has to be lived.
And involving employees in finding solutions seems important too.
Crucial. Participatory approaches, asking employees what the problems are, involving them in creating solutions that leads to much more effective and sustainable change.
Okay. So wrapping this up, it's clear that workplace stress and burnout are, well, huge challenges, complex ones.
Definitely require a comprehensive response, looking at both sides.
We've covered the difference between stress and burnout, those key organizational drivers, the impact on people, the impact on companies.
And hopefully the key takeaway is that it's a shared responsibility. Individual strategies are important, but systemic organizational change is absolutely critical. We can't just rely on people coping better.
Right. The hope, really, is to move towards workplaces where people don't just survive, but actually thrive. And the benefits go beyond just well-being, better engagement, innovation, productivity.
And it's exciting to see these shifts in thinking, like NIOSH's Total Worker Healthy or the Surgeon General's idea of workplaces as engines of well-being.
Yeah. Or WHO emphasizing decent work for mental health. It feels like a move from just reacting to problems to proactively building strength and health into the system.
A much-needed shift.
And work is always changing, isn't it? So our strategies need to keep evolving too. We need to be dynamic, adaptable, keep learning how to best support well-being, now and in the future.
Constant learning, flexible approach.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to consider.
Yeah.
What's one small change, just one thing, that maybe you personally or your organization could start doing today to begin fostering a healthier, more supportive work environment?